The Childhood of Jesus, the Gospel of James, Biographical Gospel of the Lord, Chapter 72, The Lion of Judah. When Cyrenius with Joseph and Moronius Pillar approached the villa, Mary with the child in her arms went to meet the three in anxious concern and quickly asked Joseph, "Joseph, my dearly beloved husband, tell me, what happened to the young people? For if such sacrifices always take place here because of the not infrequent occurrences of such elemental storms, then we are not safe either with our child. For while he has great power, we still had to flee Palestine before Herod despite this power. From which I have concluded that in certain instances, the child still has too little power. Therefore, it is our responsibility to remove him from all great dangers." Joseph answered Mary, "My, by the Lord himself to me espoused wife, have no fear on that account. Behold, not a hair of the young people so ignominiously intended for sacrifice has been touched. Our dear Cyrenius has promptly given them their freedom, and in their stead condemned the three priests who were here yesterday, and requested his permission for the slaughter of these young people. The priests are now condemned to a most excruciating death on red-hot iron crosses. But, among ourselves, only seemingly. Tomorrow morning, instead of the fulfillment of the death sentence, they shall obtain a pardon. And this rebuke will certainly serve them as a thorough warning, by means of which they surely will no more suggest any such sacrifices to the idols. Therefore, my dearly beloved wife, be wholly without fear, and consider, the Lord who has led us so safely up to now will neither deliver us up to the power of the heathen in the future." These words put Mary completely at ease, and her mien regained its cheerfulness. Here the baby smiled into the mother's face and said, "Mary, if someone had tamed a lion in such a manner that the lion carried him about like a gentle beast of burden, do you suppose that it would be praiseworthy of him while astride the mighty back of the lion to be afraid of the flighty rabbit?" Mary was astonished at the deep wisdom of these words, but she did not understand them. And the baby again said to Mary, and that with quite a serious mien, "I am the mighty Lion of Judah who carries you upon his back. How then can you fear those whom I can scatter like loose chaff? Do you really suppose that I fled before Herod to protect myself from his wrath? Oh no, I only fled to spare him, for if my countenance had beheld him, he would have been lost forever. See, the dear little children who were slaughtered for me are already happy beyond measure in my kingdom. They are around me daily, and even now perfectly know me as their Lord forever. See, Mary, that is the way matters stand, and that is why you should be silent about me wherever you are, as you were warned. But you may well know for yourself who he is whom you shall call, the Son of God, and also did call him that." These words made Mary quake through and through, for she now fully realized that she was carrying the Lord on her arms. But also Moronius, who was behind Mary, heard the words of the child and fell down before him. It was only now that Cyrenius discovered Mary's presence, for until now he was engaged in conversation with one of his accompanying secretaries. He therefore suddenly hurried over to the child and kissed and caressed him, while the baby did the same, and then said, "Cyrenius, raise up Moronius, for he is now prepared. Now he may recognize me. Do you understand what I am saying therewith?" Chapter 73. The baby's dictum to Cyrenius. When they all had arrived at the villa, Cyrenius immediately sent his adjutant into the city to the garrison commander, and informed him that on this and the following day no parades nor marches from the city were to take place. For such was the custom with the Romans, on extraordinary occasions, that with certain phenomena, as perhaps an eclipse of the sun or moon, a violent storm, fiery meteors, comets, the sudden appearance of an insane person, an epileptic seizure, as well as extraordinary days of execution, all these by custom did not permit the Romans to also deal with ordinary matters of state, for all such days were considered by the otherwise in many ways realistic Romans as days of misfortune, or as special days of the gods, which the people were to keep holy at the first opportunity, and were not to make use of them for their personal business. While Cyrenius did not take much stock in these empty customs by himself, he had to observe them because of the populace which still adhered firmly to such follies. When the adjutant had departed, Cyrenius said to Joseph, "Esteemed friend and brother, have a breakfast prepared now. After breakfast we will all go into the city together and there view the ravages of the storm. On this occasion we will undoubtedly find many citizens of this locality who are poor and were struck by misfortune, to whom we shall give aid in every possible way. Then we will inspect the harbour and see what condition the ships are in, and if and to what extent they were damaged. No doubt a number of tasks will arise for your sons, whom I will immediately name as first overseers, since the city especially has a very great lack of builders. For Egypt, from the architectural point of view, is now far inferior to what it was 1,000 years ago at the time of the old pharaohs." Joseph immediately acted on the wish of Cyrenius, and had a simple breakfast prepared consisting of bread, honey, and milk, and a few fruits. After the meal, Cyrenius and all the table guests arose and wanted to go into the city according to his intention. But the baby called Cyrenius to himself and said to him, "My Cyrenius, you are going into the city to help the suffering citizenry in any way you can, and your greatest desire is to have me with you. Yes, I will also go with you, but you must hear me and follow my advice. See, those who are suffering the most are surely those three who were condemned by you to a 24-hour fear of death. Now mark, I am not pleased with the too great suffering of these who are wretched. So we will first go there and help these most miserable souls. Only after that we will visit the lesser unfortunates in the city and the sea harbour. If you will do that, I shall go with you, but if you will not, I shall stay at home. See, I am also a master in my own way, and can do as I please without relying on you. But if you do take my advice, I will surely rely on you." Chapter 74. The Pardon of the Priests. When Cyrenius heard this from the to him above all exalted little cradle orator, as he sometimes called him, he hesitated within himself and did not know just what to do. For on the one hand, he felt himself to be too greatly exposed before the people as an inconsistent commander-in-chief and supreme governor. But for all that, he just had too much respect for the tried and tested power of the child. For a while he thought back and forth, and then said to himself, "Oh Scylla, oh Charybdis, oh myth of Hercules at the crossroads. Here the hero stands between two chasms. If he avoids the one, he plunges inevitably into the other. What shall I do now? Where shall I turn? Shall I, for the first time, appear inconsistent before the people, and do the will of this mighty child? Or shall I act according to my own anyhow very mild decision?" Here the baby again called Cyrenius to himself, and smilingly said, "My dear friend, you concern yourself vainly over nothing. What is Scylla and what Charybdis, and what the hero Hercules before me? You follow me, and you will not have to deal with these transitory things." And Cyrenius, recovering from his indecision, said to the child, "Yes, my life, my little Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle in the cradle, you I will please, let come what may. So then let us go to the place of execution, and there promptly transform our sentence into mercy." At this, Moronius also approached Cyrenius and said to him in an aside, "Imperial Consular Highness, I am quite in agreement with the advice of the child, for it has just come into my mind that the death penalty in priestly matters may never be inflicted on the priest without the sanction of the Pontifex Maximus in Rome, unless they were instigators to revolt against the state, which these here are not, but only blind zealots in their cause. Therefore, I am altogether for the advice of the child. To comply with it can only be to your advantage and can never give you a setback." Cyrenius was pleased at this observation of Moronius, and therefore went on his way at once with all who were to accompany him. Arrived at the place of execution, he found the three priests almost lifeless, from too great fear of a most excruciating death. Only one of them still had enough presence of mind to lift himself up before Cyrenius with the greatest difficulty and entreat him for a merciful manner of death. And Cyrenius said to him, as well as to the other two, "Look at the child whom this mother carries upon her arms. He give you back your life, and thus I also grant it to you and recall my sentence. Therefore, arise again and walk at liberty. Fiat. And you guards, judges, carriers of the staves and jailers, depart with everything. Fiat." This declaration of grace cost the three priests their lives. But the baby stretched a hand over the three, and they came back to life, and in a happy frame of mind, promptly followed the little saviour of their lives. Chapter 75. The sword justified as a shepherd's staff. Quickly leaving the place of judgment, the entire group now made its way into the city, accompanied by the three pardoned priests. When the group arrived in the city at the great square and saw the mighty heap of rubble of the great temple and of the entire still greater palace of the priests, Cyrenius clapped his hands together above his head and exclaimed in a loud voice, "What an enormous change! Yes, only the power of a god can manifest itself like this. Long periods of time are not needed, but only a nod of the omnipotence suffices to transform the entire circle of the earth into dust. O men of the earth, would you fight him who commands the elements, and they obey his nod? Would you be judge where the deity's omnipotence commands, and rule where a slight nod of the eternal ruler crushes you to dust? No, no, I am a fool that I still carry my sword girded about me as if I had any power. Away, you wretched trappings! Here in this heap of rubble is the best place for you, and my true sword shall be you, whom the mother carries upon her arms." Here Cyrenius suddenly loosed his sword and his belt of honour from his body, and vehemently wanted to hurl them into the heap of rubble. But the baby, who was present at Cyrenius' side on Mary's arms, admonished him, "Cyrenius, that you must not do. For truly, whoever carries the sword after your manner carries it justly. Let him who uses the sword as a weapon cast it from him, but whoever uses it as a shepherd's staff, let him keep it. For thus is the will of him whom heaven and earth must eternally obey. Now you are a shepherd to those who are written in the book of your sword. So gird yourself again now with this just honour, that your people will know you as its shepherd. If your flock consisted solely of lambs, then you would require no staff. But among it there are very many rams. Therefore I would rather add another staff to you than to take the one from you. It is indeed true, apart from God there is no power. But when God bestows power upon you, then you should not cast it from you into that which is under God's judgment." These words moved Cyrenius to immediately regird the sword, while he constantly worshipped the baby in silence. And the three priests were amazed beyond measure at the wisdom of this little child. Chapter 76. The True Mythology of the Gods. With the greatest esteem the three priests approached Joseph and asked him how this child had come to such a most amazing wisdom and how old he already was. Joseph answered them, "Dear friends, do not ask about that too soon, for a too premature answer could cost you your lives. But follow us and drop your many gods. Believe that there is only one true God of heaven and of earth, and believe that this one true God is the same whom the people of Israel worship and honor at Jerusalem. And you will find out within yourselves and from this child whence his wisdom is." Here the priests asked, "Sir, you speak strange words here. Are then our main gods Zeus, Apollo, Mercury, Vulcan, Pluto, Mars, and Neptune, Juno, Minerva, Venus, and others nothing more than mere creations of human fancy?" And Joseph answered, "Listen to me, friends. All of your gods came into being by the imagination of your forefathers at a time when they still knew the one God very well. These were rare poets and singers in the courts of the old kings of this land, and personified the characteristics of the one true God in apt analogies. To them, Jupiter represented the grace and love of the Father from eternity, while Apollo portrayed the wisdom of the Father, and Minerva the power of this wisdom. Mercury signified the presence everywhere of the one God by his almighty will. Venus portrayed the glory and beauty and eternally constant youth of the deity. Vulcan and Pluto represented the one God's absolute power over the whole earth. Mars depicted the divine earnestness, judgment, and death for the condemned. Neptune represented the spirit of the one God active in all waters, and how he gives life to the earth through these waters. Thus, the old Isis, and also Osiris, signified the divine, inviolably holiness, which is divine love and wisdom from all eternity in itself. And thus all the other gods portrayed nothing but the various attributes of the one God in analogous pictures. That was a highly praiseworthy illustration, for it entered no one's mind but that all of this signified only the one God in the diverse and infinite manner of his modus operandi. But in time, selfishness, self-love, and lust for power deluded and obscured the light in mankind. They lost the spirit, and nothing remained for them than the outward form, and they became pagans, which means the same as they became coarse materialists, lost the one God, and therefore gnawed on outer, empty, and uncomprehended pictures like dogs, which in their hunger gnaw on bones on which there is no more meat. Do you understand me?" Here the three made big eyes at each other and replied, "Truly, you are better versed in our religion than we are. But where did you learn all this?" And Joseph replied, "Just be patient. The child will reveal it to you. So follow us and do not fall back again." Chapter 77. The reawakening of the seven guides. The three priests now asked no more, for they recognized in Joseph a man who seemed to be deeply initiated into the old mysteries of Egypt, which otherwise were known only to the chief priests of this land. Cyrenius then turned to the three priests and asked them how many of their number had lost their lives here. And the three said, "Most powerful governor, we cannot give the number exactly, but there certainly were more than 700 which were buried, without counting the novices of both sexes." "Good," observed Cyrenius. "We shall soon inform ourselves more closely in the matter." He thereupon asked Joseph if it were not advisable to dig out those buried in the rubble. Joseph answered, "That is even a strict duty, for some novices could still be alive here and there in the catacombs, and to save these is a strict duty. When Cyrenius heard this, he immediately had 2,000 labourers called, who promptly began removing the debris. In a few hours, 7 corpses were pulled out, which were none other than the guides to the catacombs. Thereupon Cyrenius said, "Truly, I am sorry about these, for without their help we will not accomplish much in the subterranean labyrinth of countless passages upon passages." Here the baby said to Cyrenius, "My Cyrenius, as concerns the catacombs, nothing of much use is to be found in them, for they lie unused for several hundred years, and are filled with mud and all manner of vermin. These 7 guides to the catacombs merely had the empty title as such, for not one of them ever set foot in a catacomb. And now, so you may believe what I am telling you, I will also tell you that these 7 guides are not quite dead, but lie there in a great stupor, and can therefore be recalled to life. Have them massaged about their temples, chest, neck, hands, and feet by robust women, and they will soon awaken from their stupor." At this, Cyrenius asked the baby, "Oh, my life, if you were to touch them, they would surely also awaken." And the baby answered, "Do what I have advised you, for I must not do too much if I do not want to bring a judgment instead of a blessing to the world." Cyrenius did not understand these words, but he nevertheless followed the advice of the baby. He immediately had 10 robust maidens brought so they might massage the 7 guides. After a few minutes, the 7 awoke and asked the bystanders what had happened to them and what was taking place. Hereupon Cyrenius promptly had them taken to a good inn, while the people were greatly surprised at this awakening and accorded the maidens great respect.